Hey friend, Chris Vandeviver here from WhyLogicProRules.com on behalf of Cordial Cables, and today I want to show you an amazing technique that I use in just about every mix, and that is the technique of parallel compression. Parallel compression is great because it's a technique that you can use to add stability to any tracks that maybe feel a little unstable, like they're coming in and out of the picture and not staying at a consistent volume. It can allow you to add girth, aggression, a lot of energy behind a track that maybe is lacking in that department, and so many other reasons. And parallel compression, basically, you take a track that you feel is unstable or needs a little more glue or whatever, you duplicate that track, and then you smash the heck out of that duplicate with compression, and then take that fader of that duplicate that's been smashed and blend it underneath. You start from, zero and work your way up and, find that sweet spot where it adds that girth, that stability, that consistency to the track that you're looking for. And you can apply this to just about anything. I use it for drums, vocals, and even entire mixes, and I'll illustrate those three today. To start, we're going to focus on parallel compression on the drums in one project, which I have here, and then we'll take a look at parallel compression on vocals and an entire mix in a different project. The song I have is pretty anthemic. Let's take a listen, just pay attention to the drums, and then we'll dig in. Take a listen.
The sea begins while it's calling out again. It's the start of a new adventure. When the land ends and the sea begins while it's calling out again. It's the start of a...
Okay, cool. I love this song. Let's dig into the drums now. I'm going to solo them, and we'll expand a track stack in Logic here. And I have, overheads. I have a kick. I have snare. I even have a snare duplicate or double. And let's take a listen to these drums. I have my parallel compression for the drums. I like to call it drum crush. And as we listen, I'll mute the drum crush and then reintroduce it so we can get a sense for what it's adding to the drums. Take a listen. Okay, so it's definitely adding something. It's like we're giving the drums more girth. There's even some more articulation on the drums. It's kind of like the drums are going in and out of the picture. They're kind of recessing when we remove the parallel compression and then kind of standing back up when we reintroduce it. So what I'm using and how I've set this all up, if we take a look at the mixer and we'll hone in on just the drums, we can see that the individual drum tracks, that is the kick, the snare, and even the toms, are being sent through a send, through a bus, to an auxiliary channel strip. So instead of duplicating each of the kick, the snare, and the toms, I'm just sending them to a separate channel where I can process these three together. And that auxiliary channel strip is right here. It's called Drum Crush. And I'm using a plugin that's specific to Logic. It's called the Fat Effects. And I'm using it particularly for the compression. I'm smashing these drums. And then I'm using a little bit of distortion because I kind of like that texture of the distortion for these drums. And then I'm using a little bit of EQ just to roll out really the low end, just because sometimes a kick can get a little crazy when you're parallel compressing it. And, I just don't want the kick reacting. I don't want the compressor reacting so much to the kick. Let's take a listen to just the parallel compression without all the drums. Take a listen. So they're crunchy, right? They're slammed. And this is very much intentional. Now, if you want to set this up in your own DAW, if you don't use Logic, it's, you don't have to use this multi-effect plugin. Instead, let's pull up the compressor in Logic, and it could be any compressor that you prefer. I'm going to set this to the Studio FET, which emulates or, is inspired by an 1176 style of compressor. And in fact, let's pick the vintage FET. It's like the blue stripe one. And I want this to react very quickly. I want it to just slam the drums. Let's bring these drums back up. I'm going to set the ratio to full blast, and I'm just going to bring down the threshold till we're just smashing these drums. Let's take a listen to what it sounds like. Now you can hear that rumble of the kick just kind of ringing on. and I'm not in love with that. Let's now introduce a distortion plugin, because I love adding parallel distortion. We're going to go to Distortion Distortion 2, which is actually kind of modeling some distortion from like a B3 organ. But I love the sound of the Class AB Soft. It's very aggressive. Let's take a listen. You can hear it just like going crazy on the tail of that kick drum. So let's introduce as well the enveloper. And we're just going to kill the tail on the drums. That's fine enough for our purposes. So it's a different shade of distortion and compression, but now we're like, really squishing these drums. So let's, bring the fader all the way down, go to the drums, and let's reintroduce this and see what it brings to the table. So we're bringing a little different aggression to these drums, and that's a-okay. If that's your flavor, awesome. In my case, I prefer the fat effects, but whatever. We can even leave that enveloper right in there. Awesome. So let's dig into how you can use this with vocals and an entire mix. Okay. In this session, we're going to examine how parallel compression can help your vocals. I have a vocal here. It's a verse section. We're going to take a listen to these vocals. This session is quite a bit different than the last song. Take a listen to the vocals, and then we'll solo them and compare with and without the parallel compression. Take a listen.
I drink to forget about drinking low, watching the stories of you and that girl. I'm the one that hurt you, but why am I alone? 'Cause I'm at a stoplight watching you drive by, roll down the window trying to go slow.
Okay, cool. If we solo these vocals, you can see again, I have my crush channel that I like to call it with the fat effects again. Pretty much the same deal. Compression, distortion, not any EQ in this case to roll out any bottom end. That's about it. Distortion and compression. Let's take a listen to the vocals by themselves. I'll mute and reintroduce the parallel compression so we can get a sense for what it's contributing to these vocals.
I drink to forget about drinking low, watching the stories of you and that girl. I'm the one that hurt you, but why am I alone? 'Cause I'm at a stoplight watching you drive by, roll down the window trying to go slow, calling out your name, but I know nothing.
There's like a brightness that gets added. It's more stable. It doesn't sound so meek. It adds a little more authority to the vocal. And again, it's just, distortion, compression. You can use the compressor of your choice. Just smash the heck out of that signal. Use the distortion of your choice. We can do that again. In this particular track, I'll bring in the compressor from Logic and we'll just smash it again.
I drink to forget about drinking low, watching the stories of you and that girl. I'm the one that hurt you, but why am I alone? 'Cause I'm at a stoplight watching you drive by.
All right, let's find a different distortion. In this case, let's use maybe the distortion 1.
I drink to forget about drinking low, watching the stories of you and that girl. I'm the one that hurt you, but why am I alone? 'Cause I'm at a stoplight watching you drive by.
Okay, so I'm smashing it quite a bit. Maybe that's a little outside your flavor. That's a-okay. Let's take a listen to the vocals again. Let's bring the fader down to the bottom and let's, bring it back up.
I drink to forget about drinking low, watching the stories of you and that girl. I'm the one that hurt you, but why am I alone? 'Cause
Now I'm feeling like maybe the distortion is a little overkill. Let's take a listen with a little less.
I drink to forget about drinking alone, watching the stories of you and that girl. I'm the one that hurt you, but why am I alone?
Awesome. It really doesn't take much to add that stability. And again, we've taken the vocal channel, I've created a send to a bus, and that bus is spitting out right here on a separate channel. Whatever the dialogue is for your DAW, it's the same thing. You can duplicate it, or you can send that track to a separate channel for further processing and then blend it underneath. It's basically like a duplicate. Now let's take a look at the entire mix, and let's just kind of back this off. I'll set this back. Now we're going to take a listen to the entire mix at the chorus section. Because if we take a look at the mixer, you can see I went ham on the vocals, forgive me. But right here, I have a sub-mix crush. And without getting too far into it, I like to create a stereo output or a master output before the actual master output. So I can process, and if I want to compare against any reference tracks, I'm not accidentally processing my reference tracks. So basically every track in the session is its output is being sent to this separate channel I call the submix, and it has EQ, it has some other effects going on, so I can process the whole mix. But in parallel, I also have this sub crush channel, and I'm using in Logic the multipressor, which is a multi-band compressor. And I basically am smashing the low mids, the high mids, and the highs with multi-band compression. And in this particular case, I'm smashing the whole mix and blending it underneath to add volume and to add, a more sense of loudness to the entire track. And I'm using multi-band compression because it is a little less damaging on a whole mix, because a whole mix is pretty complex in terms of its spectral information. And it's going to sound more transparent as well because it's compressing each band separate from one another instead of the whole mix as one band. In this case, we have just a ratio of 2:1 for all the bands. The attack and the release are identical. And, the threshold is set to the bottom. So if we take a listen to just the sub crush, it's going to sound like garbage. Terrible. But if we listen to the entire mix and, remove it and reintroduce it, take a listen to how loud and exciting the track feels with and without.
Tell me what's one-sided. I see the lies you've been hiding. Didn't know that you would change. Thought that you was here to stay. Let it rain on. No, that you was here to stay. Tell me what's one-sided. I see the lies.
Wow, it's like the mix just opens up when we reintroduce the parallel compression on the entire mix. It sounds like garbage by itself, but it really helps everything just kind of stand up, be more present, louder, more articulation. And I haven't even blended this parallel compression channel on my submix, on my stereo output. It's just set to the default 0, unity gain. So maybe in your case, you're not going to want to set it that high, but for me, it felt right. It felt right for this mix. And there it is. It's drum, parallel compression, vocals, anything you can think of that needs, more girth, more aggression, more stability, more. So I hope this was helpful for you. Again, this is Chris Vandeviver from WhyLogicProRules.com on behalf of Cordial Cables. Thanks so much.